Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now August 31st of 2023, and given that there's a lot of things happening right now for the Snow White live-action remake that is still slated for March of 2024, and that's release date window by Disney, we also have a lot of things happening with the up-and-coming official trailer still set to debut at this year's D23 event that's going to be held earlier on in September. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we know that the cast of Snow White consists of Rachel Zegler, Andrew Burnap, and Gal Gadot. Alright, we also know that the 7 actors that portray the magical creatures, aka the 7 dwarfs, whatever you want to call them in this film, are actually very silent and have been having growing issues with Disney for what they did with their false statements about the leaked photographs, about how they lied, that they were fake, and then they retracted those statements and said that they were indeed real, they just were not photographed by Disney photographers. And so there's been a growing number of issues. You know, the 7 actors that play those characters have been told by Disney that once the SAG strike, or if and when it ends before Snow White, and that release date, that they are to remain very silent for a while and choose their questions and answers pretty much, wisely. So let's get into exactly what's going on between Zegler and Gal Gadot, because this is actually a shocking turn of events, as it turns out, of what's been going on behind the scenes of this ongoing disaster. Now, with Snow White 24 revealing so much damage control lately by Disney behind the scenes, one major development has much to do with Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. In a shocking turn of events, Zegler has been having many issues with Gal for several reasons behind the scenes. This also involves director Marc Webb. Gal has been defending many of Andrew Burnap's scenes that were shot that Rachel reportedly wants, and is pushing Marc Webb to delete them from the second act of the film. As it turns out, Gal convinced Marc Webb to erase one of Zegler's scenes, where she sings in front of the castle, and felt that the opening scene needed to be revised and feature the Evil Queen's singing session instead. This was due in part to Gal feeling like a lot of her work and her songs were being left out of the final cut of the film, which was the case, where many of Zegler's scenes were overlapping Gal's. And Gal was getting shortchanged with her work, where various sequences were in fact deleted by Marc Webb. Gal even convinced Marc to replace Rachel Zegler's song about rising up to save her father's legacy, and instead placed in a song about the Evil Queen and her evil plan in the first act. This created tensions between Zegler and Gal. Zegler also had some personal issues with Andrew Burnap, as it turns out, and wanted many of his scenes to be deleted, as she felt it was taking her limelight away, both as an actress and as a singer. Now guys, let me stop here for a second. Now, this, I think, shines more light on the famous interview that resurfaced weeks ago, that's from years ago. Not necessarily years, but it was from a couple, where Zegler talks about how maybe Andrew's scenes will be deleted, or maybe some of his scenes will be, cut, because that's Hollywood, baby. It's becoming more, seemingly possible that there's a connection with this ongoing drama to that quote in that famous interview of Rachel Zegler, pretty much downplaying Andrew Burnap. And we know that she's had a lot of problems behind the scenes with Marc Webb, the director. She is very over-demanding, much like BRIE LARSON is with her projects. It's no different. And the fact that Gal and her work, her songs, were being completely diminished in the final cut, Gal stood up for herself as well, and really got Marc Webb to delete one of Zegler's opening songs in the first act and replaced it with her own. This caused a lot of trouble between the two actresses, and why Rachel has some kind of grudge against Gal. Now, we know that Snow White is going to have a lot of songs in this movie. In fact, a whole bunch, to the point where you could basically call it an ongoing musical almost. And we know that Marc Webb has been trying to pick and choose exactly which stays and which gets cut. And that's been also, something that has been creating more tensions between Andrew, Gal, and Rachel. But let's get into the further details about this ongoing, growing issue between both Rachel and Gal, which I believe, there is a, reason behind Andrew Burnap's, mentioning in that interview. I really do believe it's connected to that. So, given that both Gal and Andrew are good friends, as it turns out, she defended Andrew above ZEGLER's requests to Marc Webb, and this was the true source of why ZEGLER, as it turns out, is angry with Gal Gadot, which may lead to reason, like I said, why ZEGLER mentioned in a past interview that maybe all or some of Andrew's scenes will be cut out because that's Hollywood, baby. This quote surprisingly does seem to connect to this newly discovered drama that has been ongoing behind the scenes between the cast members for the past number of weeks, and Marc Webb making said choices from their requests. Andrew's song reportedly is about his quest for love and being a hopeless romantic, and that ZEGLER wanted Marc Webb to erase that, the one that Gal defended essentially. So look, we already know that Marc Webb has had issues with Rachel ZEGLER, and a lot of this had to do with the fact that, she wanted some of her scenes to remain in the final cut that he decided to delete. It's all for running time purposes. Disney wants to basically alter how the movie flows. They want to make sure that this story is going to gravitate toward the common moviegoer. People that may not know much about Snow White that just check out this flick. And what's there to know, right? I mean, it's not like it's a beat-for-beat remake, so I don't know what Disney's argument is with that, but we know that Bob Iger really gave false promises, alright? Both Bob Iger and Chapek, actually, in the past, did allude to the fact that this Snow White film was going to be based on the 37 original, beat-for-beat, an accurate representation, turned out to be completely false, and really misleading. And I think that's another reason why a lot of Disney fans and Snow White fans are very angry with this movie, because both CEOs did mention that this was going to be a complete, beat-for-beat accurate representation of the original 37 film. So, look, I'm not surprised about Rachel ZEGLER having an issue with Gal, and don't be surprised, by the way, guys, if you don't see them together a lot in interviews if and when the SAG strike comes to a close before Snow White releases. And I think that's going to be interesting, because let's say if the SAG strike ends by January or February, let's just say that, right? And it ends right around when Snow White debuts in theaters. They could do some last-minute interviews, some last-minute late-night appearances on television. I'm going to say this right now, don't be too shocked if you don't see them together, because this may very well be connected to just that. So, we know that, Andrew Burnap has been very silent about this movie as well, and we know that a lot of this has to do with the fact that this is one of his big movies, and he didn't really get to talk about it all that much because of everything happening with SAG, mind you, but even before SAG, Andrew did not get to really talk about it all that much. So I would like to hear what you guys have to say about all this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again. From night to moon we hear their moans again.